Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Nelson Vasquez from Central Florida. Today I am in Tampa, Florida, because tomorrow we start with Hack Your Health. Uh, Thank you for being here. If you please put in the chat where you're watching from, and we're going to be talking today to, now, forgive me if I pronounce this incorrectly. My bias is that I speak Spanish, so when I see your name, I read Mauro, but I don't know if that's the way you pronounce it. I still cannot hear you. So while he works out the technical difficulties, please put in the chat, like I said, where you're watching from, and if you have any questions for him. I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of a bio on Mauro, or Mauro, like I would say. Mauro Stara is the founder of Six Pack CEO. He's a peak performance expert and trusted advisor to successful CEOs and business owners. Known as the last resort for those exhausted from mainstream approaches, Mauro specializes in resolving challenges where others have failed. By prioritizing advanced blood work testing and personalized coaching, he tackles the root cause of stagnation, which is hormones. With his guidance, clients achieve lifelong sustainable transformations, reclaiming vitality and confidence amidst demanding schedules. And hopefully, he has resolved the technical difficulties in a minute. Okay, let's see. All right. Let's see who we have here. And we have Ivy, Miss Laugh-A-Lot, hello. Lorraine Baxter from Queensland, Australia. Bacon Runner, good afternoon. Juliet. Don't quite see this name here. Oh, Brian. All righty. Granny Boo, hello. How are you? Brenda McIntyre, hello. Carnivore Farm Mom. All righty. Roxanne Friend. Booby Goats. How are you, Aaron? Let's see. Brian is asking, how was my drive to Tampa? It was very good. Thank you. We are already in the hotel. And we'll see you. Whoever's going to be here tomorrow in Tampa for Hack Your Health, we'll see you then. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Juliet, you're not going to be here. You got to take care of your mom, of course. Hello, Tom, Anthony. Yeah, pink-eyed booby goats. Okay. Don't touch anything here. Won't give it to us. Hello, Amy. George, good enough. How are you doing? Oh, you know what? I think I am. Now that I see George, I don't know if I played this before. I have a video uh, summary of the book that George recommended to me. Very old book. And I think we played the video maybe on a Zoom call and it wasn't live, but I think it's worth doing again. So let me see. At the moment, it looks like we may have lost our guest. He was having technical difficulties and his sound wasn't coming through. So let me see if I can find the philosophy of the stomach. Okay. So, yeah, we don't have our guest still. Brian, we're going to hopefully be taking pictures. We do have a videographer, Kiltz Health Us, and he's going to be there taking video. So you'll be seeing over the next few days and probably a few weeks some video from the event. He's going to be following Dr.Kiltz and having him talk to people. I'll probably do some interviews. All right. If my guest doesn't come back, we might follow Juliet's suggestions, okay? All right. Let me. Bernard Moncrief wrote a book, The Philosophy of the Stomach, mid 19th century, 1856, I believe. And it is available for free in Google Books. You can download it. It's not that long. And I have a video summary on the book. So let me see if we can show it. Okay.
Okay, let's dive into something pretty wild today. We're going to jump in a time machine and unearth a radical dietary text from a time long before the internet, long before influencers or any modern diet trends. What we're looking at is this fascinating piece of history that, you'll see, is an incredibly powerful precursor to the conversations we're having right now around keto and carnivore lifestyles. So, right out of the gate, this was the bold claim on the title page of a book from the mid-19th century. I mean, just look at the confidence of that statement. It's not a suggestion, it's not a, hey, you might want to try this. It's presented as a fundamental truth, a whole philosophy for human health. And the man behind this incredible declaration? Bernard Moncrief. And get this wasn't written on some blog last year. This was published all the way back in 1856. So who on earth was this guy? And what could possibly drive him to conduct such an incredible personal experiment? Let's find out. So, what would make a man in the 1850s adopt such an extreme diet? Well, as you can see, it was really a 1-2 punch. His deep, deep frustration with the medical science of his day, and the discovery of a very unlikely hero. Moncrief looked at the field of physiology and just saw a chaos of different opinions. He'd read the scientific literature, and all he found were endless debates and contradictions. What seemed to be a solid fact one day was completely overturned the next. Sound familiar at all? Yeah, I thought so. He just felt that academics were stuck in their ivory towers, endlessly theorizing, but failing to produce any practical, reliable knowledge for actually preserving health. He was just done. Done with the noise, done with the conflicting expert opinions. He wanted something real, something he could prove for himself. And amidst all this scientific chaos, Moncrief found his inspiration. And it wasn't in some contemporary scientist, nope. It was in the story of a man who had lived 300 years earlier, Louis Cornaro. Now, Cornaro's story was just this incredible tale of radical self-transformation through diet. Cornaro's example was just a lightning bolt for Moncrief. Reaching the incredible age of 100 after nearly dying in his 30s, this became his guiding light. It was proof, hard proof, that an individual could take control of their own health through diet alone, completely bypassing the confusing theories of the so-called experts. All right, so inspired by Cornaro and totally fed up with theory, Moncrief decided to conduct what we would now call a powerful N of 1 experiment. And the only subject he could truly trust? Himself. His method was as simple as it was extreme. For 6 straight months, he would live exclusively on plain milk. That's it. No sugar, no salt, not a single condiment. His goal was to completely naturalize his sense of taste, to wipe the slate clean and finally discover what his body truly wanted, not what a lifetime of habit told him it wanted. And the results he recorded were, well, they were profound. He didn't just survive on this diet, he absolutely thrived. He wrote about this dramatic surge in physical energy and mental clarity, feeling a joy and movement that he hadn't experienced since he was a little kid. And the physical transformation he documented was just remarkable. He lost about 20 pounds of what he called superfluous fat. Great term, by the way. His complexion became clear and youthful, and his energy just surged. He said he felt as if this heavy physical load had literally been lifted from his body. But maybe the most fascinating outcome of his entire experiment, the part that really formed the core of his new philosophy, was the complete and total transformation of his palate. So after 6 months on nothing but milk, he decided to try the foods and drinks he once loved, and the result was just shocking. Fine wines, coffee, sugar, spices, even things like bread and fruit, he found them all completely repulsive. The only things that tasted truly good to his new regenerated senses were plain meat and plain milk. That's it. This personal revelation, well, it wasn't just some quirky little curiosity for him. Oh no, this became the absolute foundation for his philosophy of the stomach, a bold, sweeping argument for the superiority of an exclusively animal-based diet for all of humanity. And he didn't just use words to make his case. He wanted people to see it. He actually included a visual aid in his book, this engraving comparing the physique of a man on the standard mixed diet to one on his proposed animal diet. Now, his theory here, while it might sound pretty strange to our modern ears, was that the animal diet actually reduced the size and the burden of the abdominal organs by a full third. And this, he argued, allowed the lungs to expand more fully, leading to way more vitality, energy, and overall health. So his whole philosophy, it really rested on these core pillars. He believed, number 1, that animal food was simply the most digestible fuel. 2, he saw condiments as harmful stimulants that just trick you into overeating. 3, he argued that our teeth are literally designed for meat. And finally, that true health comes from nourishing the body with the smallest, most potent quantity of food possible. Less is more. And this right here, this was Moncrief's personal motto. It was the driving force behind his entire project. For him, the chaos of scientific opinion was just noise, just static. His own 6-month, deeply personal experiment, that was the one fact that mattered. That was the single fact that outweighed all the competing theories of his day. Moncrief's journey is just this powerful, historical example of what we now call an N of 1 experiment. And for us, as current or future health coaches, it really brings up a crucial question we face every single day. In a world that is saturated with large-scale studies and population data, what's the role of deep, personal experience? How do we balance the power of individual stories, these incredible stories like Moncrief's, with the need for broader scientific data? It's an absolutely vital question to consider as we guide others on their own unique health journeys.
All righty. George, if you're still here, please come in. I'm going to post the link here. And if anyone else wants to come in and comment, like Juliet suggested, you can go ahead and do that. And if at some point our guest comes back, then unfortunately I'm going to kick you all out. But George, if you come in and have some comments on Moncrief and his book, I would appreciate it. Okay. If any of you have any questions about what you heard, interesting that he landed on eating only meat, not bothering with anything else that filled the stomach, and no spices. I don't think he even used salt, by the way, but he landed on eating meat, no vegetables, no spices, because the spices he suggested trick you into eating more flavor, right? And this is what ultra processed food manufacturers do today. They find that flavor that it's addicting to have you consume more and more and more. Now, what do you think, George?
Yeah, I was very interested to find it. It was really quite a simple find because I just wanted to know about the history of the carnivore diet. Because obviously we know that it was Sean Baker back in 2016-17 who wrote the book, The Carnivore Diet. But I thought there's got to be a longer history to it than that. Where did it all come from? And so I put it quite simply into one of these search engines, History of the Carnivore Diet. And it was actually we're brothers in caps again. Dr. Nelson, well done, excellent. So it came up actually on good old Wikipedia, and one of the first names he got mentioned was, in fact, Bernard Moncrief, and his book, The Philosophy of the Stomach. So that was my start point, and it was really quite simple after that. And I found I then put Bernard Moncrief book into that same search engine, and up came a website I think called Nutritional or something like that. Anyway, you caught me by surprise here, obviously. I really needed to re-research this, but then it had it in PDF form on there, and it had a great overview. Now, at the moment, I am struggling for time, so I haven't actually had a chance to read the book itself, but I read the overview and basically was very grateful to you for being able to put together some coaching stuff. And Juliet's asked me, did I mention the guy Luigi, whatever his name was, now I can't remember, but the Italian nobleman, I think they called him Lewis on the video, but I think his actual real name was Luigi. Lewis is an anglicization of Luigi. It was Cantone.
Yeah, I think it's Vernaro, is it?
Yeah, so yeah, Vernaro, yeah, was it? Yeah, Cantani was a guy from the 1870s. Oh, we'll talk about it actually.
So you find that interesting that 170 years almost ago, he points out a few things that I think are interesting to me. He talks about the decreasing of his abdomen by a third. So 33% weight loss, or of what I have to assume is visceral fat. The guy lost a third of his waist basically visceral fast, and he started with the milk only for 6 months, and then went on to eat meat, and he wasn't eating any plants or any spices. And this is 170 years ago, and he found many benefits.
It's very true.
Diet, right?
I mean, the thing is that obviously we found the same today, because I was up at the Armistice Day parade, the what you call Veterans Day, on the 11th, and I met a guy that I was talking to there, and my brother was he was a friend of my brother's, and he is quite a severe epileptic, and he'd never heard of the ketogenic diet. And my brother said, "Oh, you should have seen George 3 years ago. He had a huge belly, and now he has a hollow belly," is the actual description. So clearly, the question is, have I just lost visceral fat, or have I actually shrunk my intestine at the same time? And I'm going to just put up the before and after photographs there. I think that's quite clear on screen.
Well, that's two different people.
No, it wasn't. I'm afraid that was me actually in August 2019. That was at my cousin's 70th birthday celebration in 2019.
You look great, George. You look great.
The other one, the after, was in August of this year. So there is 6 years difference there. But having said that, I didn't start this journey until March of 2022. So I started this journey at 293 pounds, which is pretty much what you saw me there in 2019. And then I am now, I was there, I think, about 170 pounds. I put on a couple of pounds since, but I'm not concerned about that, because we know that we fluctuate quite a lot. So yeah, it's I was a classic case of what happened there. I actually lost 42% of my body weight. So that was even more remarkable. So yeah, hopefully that is the case. Now, the really sad thing about Bernard Moncreiff that we didn't cover there was the fact that he committed suicide at the age of 37. He wrote the book when he was 35. I think he published it on the 1st of January of 1856. But he killed himself on the December the 28th of 1859 because he'd completely run out of money. He had no profession. He wasn't a doctor or a scientist. He was a bookkeeper, but he had no work. And he was reduced to trying to survive on bread, potatoes, and sugar water. And it made him so miserable and so depressed that he borrowed some money, went out and bought some what they called laudanum back in those days. I think it's chloroform, and used it to commit suicide in his rented lodgings. He left a very detailed suicide note in which he apologized to his landlady and left her all his possessions because he couldn't afford to pay her anything. But he said it was the diet that he was being forced to subsist on, which was potatoes, bread, and sugar water, that had caused him such misery. And he had no heat either, and this was in the depths of winter. So he was a massive loss to us because he didn't have a chance to really carry through with the book. He died too young. Had he carried on, it's possible he might have actually sort of picked up some followers, as indeed in the next decade William Banting did over in the UK, because he actually was able to publish his book or his pamphlet 3 times, whereas poor old Bernard only published it once and then died very shortly afterwards and was really lost to history, to be perfectly honest with you. But
very sad. And basically, we do know that a lot of people do get more depressed and anxious and mental illnesses when their diet is all carbohydrate. I don't know if that played into it, probably did. Now, so on the other side, what do you think about eating a lot of meat? We keep hearing, for 60, 70 years or longer that it's going to increase your chances of dying, that it's going to cause inflammation, that it causes all kinds of cancer. Okay. What do you think about that, George?
Yeah, I think it was politically driven by Ansel Keys, not necessarily originally, but certainly he was one of the main proponents of his diet heart hypothesis. He was Man of the Year in 1961. Now, the real key date here was 1955, when the heart attacks were starting to become a major factor in death in the United States. And the real frightener was the Eisenhower's, the President Eisenhower's. Was it Roosevelt? Sorry, was it Roosevelt or Eisenhower? I think it was FDR.
Eisenhower. I believe it was Eisenhower.
Oh, it was Eisenhower. Okay, yeah. So yeah, Eisenhower had a heart attack, and again, you caught me by surprise. In 1955, his doctor was a Dr. Paul White, I think, or Wright. And basically, Ansel Keys was friends with his doctor. So basically, Ansel Keys saw himself a chance to become the hero of the hour, and he was going to solve the problem as to why there was heart attacks happening in the United States now. Eisenhower smokes about 3 packs a day, so that was never mentioned. But basically, Keys did the classic thing of deciding what he was right and set out to prove it. Instead of sort of thinking there was any other possibility, he fixed on a target, and it didn't matter to him what he did to actually achieve that target. So what he actually did was fraud. He did a 22-nation study and chose 7 nations from that study, which fitted a perfect graph which showed the more saturated fat you ate, the more likely you were to get a heart attack. And the rest, but the actual real graph, it was just absolutely random. So that's what created the diet heart hypothesis. That is what gave him the status of Time Magazine Man of the Year in 1961, and eventually led to the McGovern report of 76-77 and the dietary guidelines of 1980. Now, at that time, there was an Englishman called Professor John Yudkin, who knew that sugar was the problem, not saturated fat. He was a massive threat to Keys. Keys had huge political clout, which Professor John Yudkin over here in the UK didn't. So he basically did a character assassination of Yudkin. Yudkin was called by McGovern, Senator McGovern, who was doing his report in 1976-7, to give evidence. Now, a quick word about McGovern. McGovern had been annihilated by Nixon in when he stood against him for the presidential election
in 1972.
Yeah, 1972. And so basically he was a man with a chip on his shoulder as well. He needed to leave himself a legacy somewhere in history. So he failed he was a failed politician, basically. So he was bitter and twisted and needed to leave a legacy. Hence, he organized a McGovern report, called Professor John Yudkin, who had written a book called Pure, White and Deadly about the dangers of sugar in 1971 too, and told him to give evidence at his report, at his hearing, if you like. And Yudkin said that sugar was a problem, not saturated fat. And basically, McGovern simply dismissed him with the words something along the lines of, "This goes against everything that my doctor has told me." And that was as far as Yudkin got at that hearing.
However, there was no strong evidence of any of that. It was just, no, we think it's this way, so let's do it this way.
Yeah. There was actually sorry, Dr. Nelson, there was some strong evidence actually, which was totally ignored. You're going to know what I'm talking about. The Minnesota coronary experiment.
But I'm saying there was no strong evidence that it was the cholesterol and the fat.
Yes. No, there wasn't. But what I'm going to say is there was actually contrary evidence that it was, in fact, it wasn't the cholesterol and the fat, because I'm sure you're familiar with the 1968 to 1973 Minnesota coronary experiment, which was
very familiar. I told this story many times.
Which was basically conducted in institutions, so they're able to control it. And it actually proved that there was a higher overall mortality rate for those who were on the so-called heart healthy fats, which were the seed oils, versus the saturated fats. Yes. Now, Ansel Keys was involved in.
At that time, the group that was that was not the control group, the intervention group, it was corn oil.
Yeah,
and exactly. The results were that the people on corn oil had more strokes than the people on the animal fats.
Exactly. But
however, it did lower cholesterol.
Yes, it did, yes, with the result of increased strokes. So, Dr. Nelson, do you want to tell the story of what Ansel Keys' involvement in that and what happened to that report?
Well, first of all, Ansel Keys was the principal investigator, but after the study was finished and they analyzed the data, he took his name off. the report. And the report was not published. Now, have found like 2 different dates, but the report wasn't published until the 2000s. I don't know if it was 2009 or 2015, but
I think it was
finally came to light.
2015.
And definitely, hey, you can't call it anything else but a cover-up, you would think, although not all studies are ever published. There are many studies that don't prove the theory of the investigators, and they end up not being published. There's nothing illegal about that.
No, exactly. Dr. Nelson, can you tell me which library it was found in?
No, I that detail I do not know.
Yeah, I'm making a bit of a joke here because it was actually found in the cellar of the son of Ivan Frantz, who was left carrying the baby because Ancel Keys took his name off it and left his co-conspirator Ivan Frantz in charge.
So I did know the son of the other investigator, because Ancel Keys no longer appeared named on the report. Hello, DC. How are you doing?
Good. I see we're talking about conspiracy theories today.
We're talking about facts, DC.
Yeah. I want to play, and I was mentioning the red meat and the all the problems that supposedly causes. So this is based on a study it's not a new study, from 20 years ago. I am going to play this, okay? And let me see. I'm going to bring it up here. And I'm going to play this, and then we can comment on that, okay? And this lasts about 6.5 minutes.
All right. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tear into a massive new scientific study, one that really throws a wrench into a huge controversial belief in nutrition. So let's just get right to it. Is eating animal protein actually risky for your long-term health? I mean, this is the question, right? It hangs over everything. And look, if you're doing anything like low carb, keto, or carnivore, you have definitely heard the warnings. But what does the long-term data really say? Well, a huge new analysis might just have the answer we've been looking for. Okay, so let's set the stage here. To really get why this new research is such a big deal, you kind of have to understand the battlefield it's walking onto. For years, there's been this huge ongoing debate about where we should get our protein from. And this right here, this is the core conflict. It's like a nutritional tug of war. In one corner, you've got the narrative that animal protein is basically public enemy number 1 for heart disease and cancer. And in the other corner, you hear all these concerns about plant proteins. Are they complete? What about anti-nutrients? It's no wonder everyone's so confused. So, enough with the narratives, let's get into the evidence. This study brings an absolute mountain of data to the table, and it's from one of the most solid nutritional data sets in the US. First things first, look at the scale of this thing. We're not talking about a small little study. We're talking about data from nearly 16,000 adults. A sample size that big, that gives the findings some serious weight. And where did this data come from? Well, it's from an incredibly credible source, the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, which everyone just calls NHANES. Think of it as this massive, long-term project run by the CDC. Their whole job is to figure out what Americans are actually eating and how healthy they are. It's the gold standard for this kind of info. So here's the really clever part. The researchers took all this super detailed health and diet data from way back between 1988 and 1994. Then they basically hit fast forward, jumping ahead to 2006 to check mortality records, who had passed away and from what. This lets them connect the dots over the long term and look for patterns between diet and, well, death. All right, now for the main event. Let's dive into the core findings. This is where we get to the heart of it all. Does the source of your protein, animal versus plant, actually predict your risk of dying? Let's see. First up, the big one, all-cause mortality. That's just a fancy way of saying your risk of dying from any cause. It's the broadest, and you could argue the most important measure we have. Okay, look at this table. The key number here is the hazard ratio. Just think of it like this. A score of 1.0 means no effect at all. It's neutral. And what do we see? Animal protein is at 0.99, plant protein is at 1.02. I mean, you can't get much closer to 1.0 than that. The bottom line, absolutely no link between protein source and your overall risk of death. Flat.
Okay, but what about heart disease, right? That's the big boogeyman. That's the main reason people following a meat-heavy diet get so much flack. So what did the data show for cardiovascular mortality? Well, take a look. It's practically a carbon copy of the last slide. The hazard ratios for both animal and plant protein are just floating right around that neutral 1.0 mark. The conclusion is just crystal clear. In this massive data set, there was zero association between the type of protein people ate and their risk of dying from heart disease. None.
But wait, the story isn't over. Because when the researchers drilled down specifically into cancer mortality, they found something that might just flip the script on the whole conversation. Get this, the crucial takeaway here is that a higher intake of animal protein was actually linked with a slightly lower risk of dying from cancer. The hazard ratio was 0.95. Now, it's a mild effect for sure, but the point is, it points in the exact opposite direction of what the mainstream narrative would have you believe.
So the researchers didn't stop there. They decided to investigate one of the most popular theories out there, the supposed biological mechanism for why animal protein is meant to be so bad for us.
You've probably heard of this one. The theory is that eating animal protein jacks up a hormone called IGF-1. And then, high levels of IGF-1 are supposed to increase your risk of, dying. It sounds plausible, right? It's a neat little story. So the researchers said, okay, let's check the data and see if it's true.
And the answer? A resounding nope. In this massive data set, there was zero link between a person's actual IGF-1 levels and their risk of dying from anything. Not all causes, not heart disease, and not cancer. So that whole popular theory, it just didn't hold up in the face of real-world data.
Okay, so after all of that, what does this all mean? What's the big picture here? I think the best way to sum it up is to just use the researchers' own words, straight from their conclusion. They state it as clearly as possible. Their data does not support the idea that where you get your protein from is linked to a higher risk of death. And they even add that animal protein might be a little bit protective when it comes to cancer.
Now, in the spirit of full transparency, we always have to look at the funding and potential conflicts of interest. The authors here do disclose consulting work and grants from various groups in the food industry, including dairy councils. That's just important context to have with any scientific paper. It's part of doing your homework so you can weigh the evidence for yourself.
So let's just boil this whole thing down to the key takeaways. 1, in a huge data set of almost 16,000 people, there was no link between protein source and dying from all causes or heart disease. 2, animal protein actually showed a slight protective effect against cancer death. 3, that whole IGF-1 theory that gets thrown around, this data didn't support it. The bottom line, for anyone out there who's constantly told that their high-protein, animal-based diet is dangerous, these findings are a pretty powerful counterargument. And that leaves us with one last really important thought. If a massive study like this suggests that the whole animal versus plant protein war isn't the deciding factor for mortality, then maybe, just maybe, we've been focusing on the wrong thing all along. What if things like food quality, how processed our food is, or our overall dietary pattern matter way more than this one single debate? Now that's something to chew on.
Okay.
Well, I'm a little bit surprised, actually. I'm not
by the way,
about meat.
that study was published this year, but it's from reviewing all data that had been available for many years, because the study was conducted and tracked during the 1990s, right? Sorry, DC, you were saying.
No, I'm not surprised by the meat side of it, but plant proteins, the bioavailability is the problem there. What are you going to really get out of plant protein? Nothing really, are you? So, how long was this study done over? It was.
I believe there was over 6 years, 16,000 people. It's a powerful study, really. Yeah. The key points there are that, number one, it's not true that you'll die more, you'll have higher mortality if you eat meat. In fact, maybe there was a little bit of a protective effect against cancer.
Exactly.
No difference with heart disease, and no difference really in all-cause mortality, just between eating. Now, I am pretty sure that that study did not include pure carnivores, right? It
Yeah.
was just people who ate meat, okay? And I don't know I do have the study, and I quickly read over it once, but it's still interesting. A lot
The
of
people,
uh,
the people sourcing proteins from plants, though, were they only eating plants as well?
I don't know the details of.
That's the problem with nutritional science or nutritional studies, is that
Of course.
but that's, you get that in everything though too. But there were a couple of good studies that came out
And
last
this
year as
study was
well, talking about
sponsored.
fatty acids.
Sorry, Dave. And this study was sponsored by the milk industry, by the way.
Yeah. So I mean, like,
If you have any
you're
questions,
always
put
going
them
to
in the
find
chat,
holes
please.
in these things. Yeah, but it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
there
the thing is,
were a couple of.
if we look at the dates, Dr. Nelson, as you say, there can't have been that many actual carnivores on it, because let's face it, the only two which I know off the top of my head is our very own Rick and Maggie White, who I know were actually carnivore during that time. There's probably one or two others out there as well.
There are a lot of people, thousands, if not, who knows, if millions, that ate or eat on mostly meat, right?
Yeah.
Of course, it's been in the past 10 years that the whole carnivore thing has exploded. And it wasn't even called carnivore until Dr. Baker coined the term with his book, The Carnivore Diet. But if you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat. And about anything, about either of the videos. DC, do you have a chance to listen to the first video? Or
No, I didn't see the first one.
No. Okay.
But
it's okay.
There were a couple of studies came out last year talking about fatty acids being protective against cancer, and they actually how long chain fatty acids actually produce more T cells in the body, so which actually, and also delivered T cells faster to cancer cells to actually inhibit tumor growth. So those things are pretty interesting as well. I mean, that I think is more. I mean, it's kind of. I mean, it's all. The problem with I mean, I like these studies like you just showed us there, because they're not just looking at one mechanism either. And I think that the problem with a lot of studies, when you're talking about studies, is they sort of reduce everything down to one sort of pathway. And that when you're talking about the body, it's like a clock. Like you're looking at one cog without taking a step back and looking at how that one cog fits in the whole picture of how the clock works. So, I mean, they're interesting studies, though.
All right. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And if I missed them, put them again, because I haven't seen really any. But if you have had any questions, put them again, and I'll be sure to highlight them, okay?
Yeah.
George had a comment here. Whenever I see DC, I find myself practicing my 4-4-4-4 breathing routine.
Yeah, I should point out that Dave and myself have been friends for a couple of years now, so I have been following him. We've done a bit of work together in the past, and I do follow the one which I've adopted, which is the easiest one to remember, is breathe in through the nose for 4 seconds, hold it for 4, out through the mouth for 4 seconds, hold it for 4, and then start the process again. That's the one which I picked up on.
Sometimes when I'm having difficulty falling asleep, sometimes I do that box breathing.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, when people have, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons for these sorts of things, but people have trouble sleeping, like they're tired but they can't sleep. That's because they're not controlling their autonomic nervous system, and they're sort of stuck in that sympathetic sort of nervous state. Okay, and sometimes you might fall asleep, but then you wake up, say 3 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning, so you get a cortisol spike. And this again, it's about your autonomic nervous system, but nothing to do with your diet. And you'll find that there's a lot of people, I mean, they always have these complaints. Doesn't matter what diet they're on, they'll have things like, the diets work great for a while, but then all of a sudden, they start having sleep issues, or they start putting on body fat and visceral fat and or so on and so on. But it's got nothing to do with their diet. And the fact is they're not controlling their autonomic nervous system, and they're sort of stuck in that anxiety or sort of warrior state that I call it a warrior state, because it's your sympathetic nervous system, or your ANS, autonomic nervous system. You can be broken up into three parts, via the polyvagal theory, where you're in that fight or flight. And when you're stuck in that fight or flight state, which most people are, it's a very common. Most people, about 99% of the population, are, because of today's lifestyle. We go to work, we have bills to pay, we have to, we look at screens and stuff like that. All of these things affect our nervous system, and it can be music as well. Will do the same thing. But when you're stuck in that state, you got, like I said, it's fight or flight. That's kind of like the warrior or sort of state as well. But when you're stuck there, you're also breeding anxiety and you find it difficult to focus and concentrate and things like that. But then if you're always in that state and it just keeps compounding, then you sort of get into the ventral vagal state, the dorsal vagal state, and you get into depression and shutdown, and you just don't want to do anything, But our natural relaxed state is the ventral vagal state. That's where we rest and digest. And the difference between being in that state and like being in the like fight or flight state, you're not absorbing half of your diet, the nutrients, for a start. So I mean, it makes a very big difference to how when you eat, your timing on your autonomic nervous system to when you're in fight or flight sort of thing. It can mean a difference of 50% of your nutrients. That's a huge difference. So these are pretty important things.
Absolutely. Louis, I see that you're here. Are you done setting up? Louis is here in Tampa also for Hack Your Health. And I believe he was helping Alia set up the booth. But I see that he's here, and he might still be there, but let me know. Bacon Runner, I think his message was to reduce the amount of running, maybe not stop running altogether.
Depends on
what do you think about this,
Dave?
So Dave, Bacon Runner keeps losing weight, she says. I don't know how much, but she wants to stop losing weight. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this could be or again, your autonomic nervous system as well. I mean, if you're on the carnivore diet, for example, I'm assuming you're a long distance runner. That's what you're talking about, running. Yeah. I mean,
it's Donna Ray is, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, my point of view is kind of different on this now. But I mean, I used to do a lot of long distance running myself. I used to run 100 kilometers a week, right? On average. Yeah, I've done marathons and all sorts of stuff as well. But I wouldn't do that anymore because honestly, we are sprinters or walkers, and that's pretty much it. However, if you are finding yourself losing too much weight, you are either not eating enough food, and it could be a combination of that and the fact that you're not controlling your autonomic nervous system. So when you do eat, you're actually not absorbing as much as you could be from your food anyway. So even if you are eating enough food, you may only be absorbing like half of the nutrients, so to speak. All right. So that could be a problem as well, especially, when people eat immediately after training. When you have just finished, like when you've been to the gym or you just finished your run or so on, you're in that warrior mindset, nervous system. Okay, that fight or flight, okay, state of nervous system. And when you eat in that state, you're just not going to absorb what you get from your food. It's just going to go straight through you. It's kind of like, because your autonomic nervous system controls your digestive system, your stomach, and so on. It kind of like it's in a paralysis mode. So most of it just goes straight through you. So these are things you need to think about. Okay, so meal timing, everything is run on a clock in your body. That's why I think of it as a clock. That's why we talk about circadian biology. Your hormones start in the morning and they progress throughout the day as we go through the day, sort of thing. But you need to get your autonomic nervous system on a timer as well. Okay, so when to be in that fight or flight, when to be in that warrior mode, and when to get into that philosopher mode, in the rest and digest mode. Okay. So things like, there are other things you can do as well, that stimulate these things. You can also train your autonomic nervous system to cope with more stresses. So things like ice baths, for example, and breath work. So you can do breath work you can use as a stressor, but you can also use it as a dial to switch from warrior mode to philosopher mode. Okay. So there are things that you can use to train your autonomic nervous system to be able to cope with more stress, and to also train it when to be in the warrior mode and when to be in the philosopher mode. And that's what you need to be working on as well. It's not just about diet, it's about lifestyle.
Is there anyone that does not have stress, DC?
No, of course not. Everyone has stress. That's the point. Like you need to be able to deal with it. You need to be able to switch on and off, and you need to be able to train your autonomic nervous system to cope with that stress.
Yeah.
So that's the point. I mean, if you don't have stress, you're dead, pretty much.
George, go ahead.
Yeah, can I give my own? You just rung a huge bell with me, DC, in my own personal life. Because as you know, I'm an ex-soldier, and I was also on the diplomatic security team in Beirut in 2006. And as you know, Beirut is a place where you have to be hyper vigilant in order to survive, because basically it is the war zone central. Now, I quit the trade in 2006, and I went into a local. It was actually in the nuclear power industry, into security there. And basically, I was in the same mindset, the same hypervigilant mindset when I went there as I was on the back streets of Beirut. And I could see massive holes in our defenses, potentially, because I'd been trained to see them. And I was massively stressed all the time. And I actually tried to bring it up with management. And for about 3 years, I was constantly hypervigilant, thinking, oh, no, we're letting people in left, right, and center. In the end, I had a bit of a nervous breakdown. I got very fat, and I lost 11 months of my life, of my working life, to stress and depression. Now, that coincided with the fact that I became very fat as well. I'm wondering whether that hypervigilance that I was suffering is exactly what you were just saying. That is what actually dragged me into that massive. That is a personal experience of mine.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, when you are stuck in that sympathetic nervous state, it just compounds and gets worse and worse. And eventually you can't, you because you've trained your autonomic nervous system to stay in that state, you can't switch it off. And then you get into, the depression and PTSD is another thing. Like this is the thing, like we can learn a lot from our ancients. Breath work to control our autonomic nervous system is not a new thing. This has been tens of thousands of years old. If you think about some of the more famous and fierce warriors in history have also been some of our greatest philosophers, because they knew how to control their autonomic nervous system. They knew when to be a warrior and when to be a philosopher. And they used to have, what they used to call it, the warrior's curse. Now breathwork goes back to like shamans in tents and things like that. It's like they used to have these cleansing sort of spiritual the sort of routines, or what do they call, like especially after battles and things like that. It was because you can see it in animals as well. Like even animals today, when they go through a traumatic experience, they will use breath work to calm their nervous system down before they get up and sort of walk away. They shake it off as well. It's part of when you get low in CO2, your body starts to shake, and this just resets their nervous system. They can get on with their life, sort of thing. But warriors, and dating right back to like Siberian shamans to Viking berserkers, and even Marcus Aurelius, the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, they use breath work to get into these meditative states. Japanese samurai, they have what was called hara breathing. Hara is like their stomach. They would use belly breathing because they believe that the belly is the stomach area is the physical, emotional, and spiritual center of gravity. Okay, and they use breath work to get into the warrior mode and to get into the philosopher mode. And today we call it PTSD, but back then they called it the warrior's curse.
Yeah.
If they didn't do the breath work, if they didn't use breath work to control their state of mind, they would get into that PTSD, that the depression, the anxiety, and some people just lose their mind in that stage as well. And if it's the same thing, if you do activation breath work every day, sort of thing, which is quite a stressor on your autonomic nervous system, you can still stay in that anxiety and depression sort of state. So you need to down regulate as well. It's about balance. Everything in nature is about balance, right? And the ancients knew this,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just a word on PTSD. That is actually when you do suffer a traumatic incident, a specific one.
Right.
But a lot of guys are suffering who haven't been diagnosed with PTSD. But what they do have is what I had, and that is hypervigilance. Every time you step out the door, you think, do I check under the car for a bomb?
Constant for days and weeks and months and sometimes years.
That's right.
Definitely messes up with.
I live in small town Bridgewater in Somerset, and when I first got back from Beirut, my instinct was to check under my car for a bomb every day. And that it's a hard habit to break, and that is a classic sign of hypervigilance. I'm okay now, sort of.
Yeah.
But it was even so. You're living in this heightened awareness at all time, and that I suppose must be a stress. And it can be no coincidence that 4 years down the line, or in fact 2000, so 5 years down the line, I ended up on Prozac in counselling, very fat, very ill, lying on the end of my bed for 11 months, unable to work. I think I can see that. I can see what you've told me tonight, DC. Makes absolute sense in my own case. So they're very.
There's a lot of good books on this too. Another good book is "The Body Keeps the Score." It's because we're talking about activating the vagus nerve, right? And that is connected to everything in your body, like your skin, your organs, all of your major organs. Okay, and when your body is in that constant tension, you're going to activate. It's sort of like rebound as well. So it's going to keep you in that into that in that anxiety sort of state as well, and it's going to elevate your heart rate, your blood pressure. Like I said, your rest and digest mode is non-existent. You're not going to be digesting or absorbing nutrients from your food. You're going to get all kinds of. I mean, this is a huge, health impact. It will ruin your organs as well. So, this is another good reason for heart disease and things like that as well. It's absolutely nothing to do with your diet. It's all about your nervous system.
Looking back on it, DC, that was also the time when my athlete's foot was at its worst. And it was also the time when I was suffering migraines, whichever way you want. And I ended up on a drug called Sumatra.
Well,
it's all kind of making sense.
Migraines are caused, migraines and headaches are also simply caused by low CO2 levels as well, because CO2 and nitric oxide are both vasodilators, but CO2 is also the signaling molecule for oxygen to be delivered to your cells. And if you've got vasorestriction because of low CO2, plus you've got the red blood cells hanging on to the oxygen instead of delivering to the cells, that's a cause of headaches, also muscle cramps and other reasons.
Thank you, guys. Thank you,
Dr.
George.
Nelson.
Thank you, DC, for being my impromptu guest today.
No problem.
The person we had scheduled had some technical difficulties, and his sound wasn't coming through. He was able to, we saw him on screen, but we couldn't hear him. So we're going to try to reschedule him again. He's a peak performance coach, and I think will be good to hear him. It's already past the top of the hour. So I will see some of you at the 5:30 Zoom call. Today's Thursday, and whoever is here at Hack Your Health, we'll see you tomorrow and throughout the weekend. Please come to our booth and come to our dinner tomorrow. It's going to be a great event. Okay?
Right.
And
take care, everyone.
If you're here in Tampa, then tomorrow you'll meet my wife.
I'd love to be there.
You don't see her.
So would I, but it's sitting, a bit far for us, DC.
She's sitting right behind me, and I call her my hermetic stress. Hormetic stress.
Hormetic stress, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
We'll
see you at 5:30, and tomorrow at 6 a.m. We'll be with you again. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.